Thank you all for coming. It's fantastic to be here. This is an introduction to vocal training tailored to flute players. How learning more about your voice can enhance flute playing and improve your vocal health. I'll be talking about my work for flute players, which I have developed from my perspective as an opera singer, a flute player, a voice teacher, and a certified Estill master trainer. First, a little bit about me. Then we're going to do a vocal warm-up. Estill voice training is an important part of what I do, so we're going to talk about that, which will lead us neatly onto the Estill power source filter model for explaining how the voice works, and an idea of a power source filter model for flute. A figure is an exercise for conscious control of a specific structure of the voice. So we are going to look at figures for voice and figures for voice that are especially helpful for flute. We're going to end with a cool down, which is part of the vocal health aspect of my work. And questions and observations we will do right at the end. Please just type in the chat. And if you could please have your head joints at the ready, that's great for when we come to do a little bit of exploring. You work with me on mute. Also, if possible, it's very helpful for me if you can please keep your cameras switched on. I'm originally from the north of Sweden, but I live in Brighton in the United Kingdom, where I run my own vocal studio, working with a broad range of voice users. I started my musical career as a flute player and studied to become a flautist and a flute teacher at the University of Gothenburg before I decided to pursue singing. I was drawn over to the dark side of singing, and so I studied solo singing at Malmö Musikhögskola, and then I did my opera training at Guildhall School of Music and Drama in London, and I have worked for many years as a professional opera singer. One aspect of Estill voice training involves observing and changing habits in singing and speaking. And this got me thinking that this could apply to flute as well, especially since I learned of flute players who had vocal health issues. I thought that perhaps if flute players could learn to separate singing and speaking behavior from flute behavior, they could improve their vocal health. Another aspect of this is that we can use that conscious control of specific structures in the larynx and in the vocal tract to enhance flute playing. I believe this is an important factor that sets apart an experienced flautist from a beginner. It's probably a coordination that we train largely through trial and error, for example in de la sonorité, perhaps without really thinking about it. Awareness and control of structures in the larynx and in the vocal tract might help you to progress more quickly and also help with consistency. So I started scoping my own larynx while playing the flute, and I was surprised at how involved it is. It made me realize why flute players can easily get vocally tired. It's not immediately obvious, but flute players are heavy voice users. I want to share with you a little bit of my journey. Here you see me with a nase endoscope. A nase endoscope is a small camera on a thin, flexible tube. You can see there that tube goes in through my left nostril and over the soft palate, and then I can look down into the throat, into the larynx. This is not entirely comfortable, hence my rather stern look there, but it is very, very interesting. It's a long process, it's an ongoing process, but I thought I wanted to share with you a few clips to give you a flavor of what I have been doing. And so here is me and a volunteer, Karen. Hi Karen, wonderful to have you here. Here's us at the Royal Sussex Hospital in Brighton. Yes, it is quite a journey and very, very interesting to learn about this. So I think we should move on now and do together a vocal warm-up. The first stop for me in any vocal warm-up is to address tension. And I was thinking for today about two places where both singers, speakers and flute players hold a lot of tension. The first one, the tongue. I want us to do a little stretch, a gentle little stretch to just release a little bit of tension in the base of the tongue. Literally like this. And breathe. Not too much effort. Good. Don't over open your jaw. Take care of your jaws. Just stretching out a little bit. Great. The other place where a lot of tension is held is in the jaw. And I thought we could free our jaws, but just giving the masseter muscles here on the side a gentle little massage, just below your cheekbone here. Give yourself a little gentle massage, massaging down towards the corner of your jaw. Great. Let's do that again. Nice free jaw. Lovely. Be gentle with yourself. Yeah. Good. Our next stop is going to be alignment. And I invite you to stand up and see if I can take that glare away. There. So stand with your feet about hip width apart. And we're going to work our posture from the feet up. So work a little bit side to side. You're looking for equal weight on your feet, side to side. Can you find a center? This may take some time, and that's okay. Now, look front to back. favor your heels somewhat ahead of the balls of your feet. So come into yourself somewhat. Think up through the bones of your body. Unlock your knees. You're not pushing your knees back. Okay. Coming up to your hips, your pelvis. Let's find a neutral pelvis by experimenting with a few different positions. Tuck under your pelvis. Okay. Now go the other way and stick your bum out. And forward again, tucking your pelvis under and sticking your bum out that way. And then find a point in between the two where the pelvis is just hanging underneath you. Okay, great. Still equal weight, still back on your heels, thinking up to the bones of your body. Come to the sternum. Collapse a little bit for me. Let's experiment with positions here. Raise the sternum a little bit too much. Okay, take care, don't hurt yourselves. This is a little bit too upright, too militant, right? Come back to the collapse. And again, raise the sternum a little bit too much. And collapse. Now just raise the sternum to a position in between the two. A comfortable, slightly raised position, nice and open across here. And think out through the top of your head and look straight ahead. Lovely. And in this position, I invite you to do a little mini dance. And I think this is very important because when we talk about alignment and posture, we often end up with tension. And this is not what alignment is about. It's about a possibility for movement. And then you can come to stillness, but still feel that any part of you could move. This is very important. And I think for both flute players and singers, it's very important to realize that alignment isn't a tick box exercise. It is something we come back to every single day. We cannot take it for granted. Very important to come back to this kind of balance. Okay, and then we're looking at the voice. So say E for me. E, E. Feel where your tongue is. A little bit higher, a little bit more forward. Now, close your lips and say mmm, mmm, with that secret E inside your mouth. Mmm, mmm. You should feel a nice buzz on your lips. Mmm. And then we're going to do a few glides, a few pitch glides on thirds, like this, starting nice and comfortable. The glissando is very important there. And here. And let's just investigate a little bit about how much breath you are using to produce this wonderful, clear, buzzing tone. If you take your thumb and your index finger and hold them under your nostrils and just feel how much breath are you using to produce clear tone here. So, can you feel a little bit of hot air on your fingers there? Great. That is not an awful lot of breath. And this is important to remember, I think. Let's compare it to a flute breath. So if you can you pretend that your index finger here is your mouthpiece and you're going to shape your embouchure and play a nice note in the middle of your range. Feel with this hand how much breath you're actually using. Okay, now come back to our humming exercise. That's quite different. And I think that's very interesting to compare the two. So that was a mini warm-up. Let's sit down, guys. I mentioned before that Estill voice training forms an important part of the work I do. So, what is it? Joe Estill was a singer, educator, teacher, and voice researcher. She sought the answer to a very simple question. How am I doing this? The answer for that search, the result of that search is a scientific, evidence-based model for vocal development that promotes isolated, conscious control of specific structures of the voice to give maximum artistic freedom, and also very important to ensure that vocal health is maintained. The work started in observation of different voice qualities, how we perceive them, their acoustics and anatomy and physiology. For instance, twang. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Or sob. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. How can we make such different sounds? What is moving? What is changing when I go between these voice qualities? A guiding principle for Estill voice training is that knowledge is power. Knowing what you are working with is a good thing. We empower singers and speakers to learn how their voices work and to take responsibility and make their own choices for their artistry. And if I look to myself, knowing what you're working with, having an owner's manual to your voice, well, through all the vocal training I did, I think there was very, very little of that. And I think that's quite interesting and something that we can improve. We use a power source filter model to explain how the voice works. Power is the breath, the fuel for your voice. The source is the source of vibrations, the larynx with the true vocal folds. And the filter is the vocal tract where we are talking about resonance. So let's look at this a little bit more in detail. So power, we are looking at the lungs there, right? Inside the rib cage. The top of the lungs are right behind your clavicle bone up here, right? And if you find the bottom part of your rib cage, there it is. And if we map out the lower part your rib cage, that's where the diaphragm is. And this is your main muscle for breathing. When you inhale, it contracts and lowers. When you exhale, it relaxes and rises. And so that's your power. Then the source of vibration is the larynx. This is my lovely larynx. This is 3 times natural size. So the larynx is right here in the middle of your neck. You can have a little feel. Careful. Yeah. So this is showing you the main cartilages of the larynx. And then if we look inside, so this is now the front and this is the back, you can see the true vocal folds there inside. And they are open when we breathe and they close when we hold our breath, when we swallow, or when we sing and speak. So the true vocal folds vibrate and they transform the breath into a sound pressure wave. And the vibration is complex. It has both pitch and harmonics. And we are then looking at the filter or the vocal tract. And if you imagine that the vocal folds are about here, roughly there, the vocal tract is everything, the hollow space, the back of your throat, the pharynx, and the oral cavity, and the nasal cavity, to the tip of your nostrils, to the tip of your lips. And the amazing thing about the vocal tract, it is that it can change shape in the most extraordinary ways. And this is partly why we call it the filter in the Estill model, because it can let certain frequencies, certain harmonics through, and it can hold others back. So when I do happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, in twang quality, bright, high frequencies, high harmonics are favored and boosted and let through. And when I do in sob quality, happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, low harmonics are favored. And yeah, this is quite extraordinary and super interesting. So if we then look at how might a power source filter model look like for the flute. So the big thing that happens here is that the source has moved. It is no longer in the larynx. It's no longer the true vocal folds. The source is now the edge of the embouchure hole. You know, the jet hitting that magical edge and helping you to start vibrations. So that is the source of vibrations, which means that the larynx at the vocal tract are now part of power, right? A part of breath control. And what about the filter? Well, the main filter, the main resonator for the flute is obviously the flute itself, but it works together. It's complemented by the vocal tract. So it's quite an interesting idea to think about power source and filter for both flute and voice. These are all the structures that we work with in the Estill model. There are 13 of them that we work with. As I said, a figure is an exercise for conscious control. And we're not going to do all of those today, but I have picked a few that I thought we could explore a little bit and see how they may be useful on the flute. So the false vocal folds and the true vocal folds are both part of the source, the larynx, and then larynx height, velum and tongue are part of the filter. So why don't we have a little play and look at how these could be helpful? I have done some awareness exercises for you that are inspired by exercises that you can find in this book, the Estill Voice Model Theory and Translation. It's a brilliant book about the Estill and Estill voice training. We're going to start with the false vocal folds. And I'd like you to do a little awareness exercise with me. So I invite you to try all the things I do and we work together. You're surprised and very happy that your friends have remembered your birthday. 3 presents for me? You're extremely happy. Say it with me. 3 presents for me. When you do this, what does the space in your throat feel like? And what do you notice about your breath? 3 presents for me. Can you hold that feeling and without voice try to make a noise on your mouthpiece, on your head joint? Beautiful. I think we're starting a head joint only flute choir here. Lovely. Now, you are lifting the presents and you are carrying them to your car. Those presents are very, very, very heavy. Heaven knows what's in them. And 3 presents for me? Try it. They're incredibly heavy. 3 presents for me. What does the space in your throat feel like now? What do you notice about your breath? Now, without using voice, hold on to that feeling and try that on your head joint. What did that feel like? Can we come back to the first feeling? That extraordinary happiness. 3 presents for me? What did that feel like on the flute? Without voice. Very interesting, I think, to observe the difference. So we're talking about the false vocal folds, and you might not even be aware that you have false vocal folds. So I love my larynx model. It's about the size of my larynx, actually. This is natural size, and I'm gonna take it apart, and we're going to look inside, and you can see here that white line there, number 28. That's your true vocal fold. So this is actually my left true vocal fold, and a little bit higher up, number 27 there, that is your false vocal fold. So that's my left false vocal fold. And they are part of primary function of the larynx. They close for protection when we, for example, swallow or prepare to cough. So what could this structure buy you on the flute? Well, I think it has a big impact on breathing and on breath control, clear tone, the quality of your vibrato. And I think learning to control this structure for a flute player might mean that you can play without experiencing strain. And I think that's very important. Let's look at the true vocal folds now. So that's number 28 there, a little bit lower down. So we're doing some awareness exercises first together. Pretend that you're at a backyard barbecue and you're picking up a hot dog bun. It's moldy. You're going to hold your breath lightly and say, ew. Ew. What do you notice when the sound starts? Ew. Then you ask around, who brought this? Who brought this? What do you notice when the sound starts, when you say the word who? Who? Can you feel that flick when you go from breath to voice? Who? What does it feel like? Who brought this? You ask your best friend. You? You? How does it feel when you start the sound now? You. You. Ew. Glottal onset. Who. Aspirated onset. You. Smooth onset. So in voicing, onsets and offsets are all about how you start and finish the sound, how you go from breath to voice. On the flute, this becomes advanced virtuosic breath control that works closely together with your embouchure. And true vocal folds has another part to it, which we call body cover. The true vocal folds are multi-layered. Simplified, we can say that they have a body and a cover. And this makes for some very interesting different ways in which they can vibrate. Thick folds, thick folds, E, R. Thin folds, thin folds. Or stiff folds. This is stiff folds. Stiff folds. Or slack folds. Slack folds. On the flute, this is super interesting. If you're interested in singing and playing at the same time, the question arises here, what kind of vibration do you want to send into the flute? That is very interesting and a lot of fun to be had with this. Next, we're going to look at larynx height. You're going to count to 3 in your normal speaking voice, and you can feel your larynx if you like. Put your hand gently on your larynx, remember in the middle of the neck, and count to 3 in your normal speaking voice. 1, 2, 3. What does the space in your throat feel like? What can you hear? 1, 2, 3. Now count to 3 as a very young child. 1, 2, 3. What does the space in your throat feel like now? What can you hear? 1, 2, 3. And now count to 3 and pretend to hold back a sob. 1, 2, 3. Did you feel your larynx move? What does the space in your throat feel like now? What can you hear in the sound? Yes, we might even yawn as we lower the larynx. So in voicing, the larynx moves for both pitch and color, and this means that we can play with bass and treble balance. And actually, many flute players do the same thing. Larynx height, the control of larynx height, may help you to access your range more easily and to play with the harmonics of your sound. The velum is next, the soft palate. I want you to feel under your nostrils with your index finger and your thumb, and I want you to say bongo in slow motion. And in which of those sounds can you feel breath and warmth on your fingers? Bongo, bongo. Oh, I think it's NG, huh? A little warming breath on your fingers. What if you stop on the first syllable, ba, ba, and feel with your hand in front of your mouth? Ba, ba. Can you feel warming breath there? Ba, ba. Interesting, depending on what you do with the soft palate. What if we find the bong position again? Can you stay in the ng position and make a sound on your mouthpiece without using the voice? I can't. Can you? Not possible. Not possible. What about the ba, ba, that position without voice? Very interesting. So in voicing, or say the velum rather, is the soft palate separates the nose from the mouth. It's the back door to the nose. You can see it. If I grab my torch, you can see it here. Can you see? There's a thing hanging down from it at the back there. If you have a phone or a mirror, you can have a look at your own. That's the soft that's a soft palate. On the flute, it is something that I would call a make or break structure, and because it have such a big impact on your breath, and but there are also possibly some interesting effects to be had there, and some play with resonance. So our last structure to explore is the tongue. The tongue. Is it only what you can see? No, there is quite a lot to the tongue. If we look at it like this and we just take the jaw off there, you can see that this is the body of the tongue. There is quite a lot to it. This is the body of the tongue. It also has extrinsic muscles that makes for a very... can you all hear me? Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, great. Sorry, with someone who couldn't hear me. All in all, this makes for a very large structure that dominates the mouth, right? And I think it's interesting when we go to train the tongue to look at different parts of the tongue. The tip, the blade of the tongue, and the back of the tongue, the dorsum of the tongue. Identifying those and looking at training them independently, it is very interesting. And in voicing, the tongue plays a big part in diction and resonance. And it's similar on the flute, the tongue is your main articulator, and the tongue position also matters for resonance on the flute. You can play with different vowel sounds. The work I do when the tongue gets involved, it is often to deal with tongue tension, and also teaching people to control the tongue independently of other structures like the jaw or the larynx. On the flute, this can help with agility, I think, and economy in movement. So this is so that was a quick little flavor of a few structures that can be helpful for flute players. So what is involved in training the voice for the flute? Well, vocal anatomy and physiology is very important, and including anatomical footage, understanding it and viewing it for inspiration, and then to gain awareness and control. Explore the Estill figures for voice with both voice and the flute. I also work a lot with crossover practice strategies. What can flute players learn from singers? I often hear flute players say, "Oh, I should take some singing lessons," and that can of course be a good thing, but there are physiological differences between flute playing and singing that I think it's useful to consider. And I think it might be more effective to work with structures that are especially helpful directly. And the beauty of the Estill approach is that we can pinpoint these structures and start to train them consciously. We're going to do a little cool down now. And my idea behind a cool down for flute players is all about transitioning from flute playing, should we say, back to speaking, from fluting to voicing. And the first thing I'd like to invite you to do, because you are experts and you are working with high demands on your breath, is to let your body take charge of your breath for a second. Let your body decide when you need to breathe, rather than the other way around. Let's just take a moment to breathe. And again, restful breathing. And then we're going to come back to the idea of alignment and release some tension. One nice thing you can do, if this is, if this isn't suitable for you, if you have a back issue, you might want to look after yourself here. But basically, a little roll down. So let your head go, let your shoulders go, bend your knees and hang over, ragdoll feeling. Let your shoulders go, let your head go, and breathe. Great. And then slowly restack, starting at the bottom, vertebra for vertebra. Let the shoulders fall into place, looking straight ahead, coming back to alignment and symmetry. And I think this is very important. Another thing that is very handy that I warmly recommend if you want to work on alignment and symmetry, perhaps after a long day of playing and teaching, is to use the semi-supine position that is part of Alexander technique. This is very, very useful. Then we're just going to come back to our voices again, making clear tone. Think of your favorite food. I want you to feel a really nice buzz here, almost annoying. Observe your breath. How much breath do you need to make clear tone? And we're going to speak. Count to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pay attention to your breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's the end of our cool down, and we're also coming to the end of this little workshop. I hope the awareness that we have started today has helped you to see your voice perhaps in a new way, and that it will spur you on to dig deeper and to learn more. I think knowing more about how your voice works and how you can control it gives you more freedom as an artist, and also possibly an edge in a very competitive field. As I said, I think sophisticated coordination between larynx, vocal tract and the flute is one part of what makes a high-level player. And as I said, this training also helps you maintain good vocal health. This is particularly helpful if you are teaching and perhaps alternating through the whole day between playing the flute and speaking and singing. So I promise I'm not proposing a flute school, but I want to present options that you can use when you work with your sound to complement what you are already doing. And you can connect with me via email or via my website or on social media. My next vocal training for flute course is coming up in June. It's on my website, and I believe it's also listed in the community events section of the NFA website. So I want to say thank you so much for coming today, and thanks to NFA for giving me this opportunity to talk a little bit about the work that I do and my ideas. And thanks to everyone who is helping to organize this terrific series, including Tanner, who has kindly hosted today. Are there any questions, comments, or observations?